What's going on, guys? I'm Chris and welcome back to another video. Today I'm giving you my top 10 favorite movie trilogies of all time. Now, some of these are trilogies within a greater franchise, but the movies that would come after the trilogy's conclusion were either years later and sort of unnecessary, or movies that I honestly just don't really acknowledge. But drop your favorite movie trilogies in the comments down below. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And without further ado, here's my top 10. So kickstarting this list is the Oceans trilogy, consisting of Oceans 11, 12, and 13. I rewatched this trilogy for the first time in quite a while back in November, and I just had so much fun with it. These movies are just so suave and stylistic, with a loaded ensemble cast featuring Brad Pitt, George Clooney, and Matt Damon. Each movie focuses on a new heist, and if you love the heist genre, this trilogy is for you. The movies are just straight up cool. I had a blast with every single one of them. 12 is probably my least favorite, 11 is my favorite, and 13 is like the middleman. But even Ocean's 13 features Al Pacino in this over-the-top villainous role. They're just fun heist movies with really dope editing, and I love how near the end of each movie we see how the heist itself was pulled off. Each movie has its fair share of tricks up its sleeves, and they're just a blast. Number 9 on my list is the Die Hard trilogy, Die Hard, Die Hard 2, and Die Hard with a Vengeance. The other two Die Hard movies came out years after these first three movies. The first Die Hard, in my opinion, is the best action movie of all time, and it's also one of the best Christmas movies ever. Die Hard 2 is a very solid follow-up that takes the premise of the first and sort of just says, what if he's in an airport this time? And then Die Hard with a Vengeance introduces Samuel L. Jackson, and the dynamic that he has with John McClane in this movie is just so fun. It's a nice breath of fresh air, and it's a lot different than the other two, which makes for a nice closure to this trilogy, essentially. This is one of the best action trilogies out there, and the third movie is slept on. It's damn near the best, but nothing can top Die Hard. It is the king of this trilogy. Live Free or Die Hard is fine, the fourth movie, but 5, whew. It's time to say hello there to number 8 on my list, because I'm rocking with the Star Wars prequel trilogy to the day I die. I have my fair share of nostalgia for these movies, as I did grow up a die-hard Star Wars fan, watching the prequels and the originals on a loop. But the prequel trilogy, in my opinion, is some of the best storytelling in the entire Star Wars franchise. Not only does The Phantom Menace have one of the best scores in all of Star Wars with Duel of the Fates, but the actual duel itself has so much significance to Anakin Skywalker's fate. We get to see a young Anakin, a young Obi-Wan. Qui-Gon Jinn is one of the best Jedi Knights of all time, and he's introduced in this movie, and it just flies by. Sure, it has its fair share of political jargon that can get a little slow moving, but that is more present in Attack of the Clones, which is clearly the weak link of this trilogy. We've got the whole epic final battle on Geonosis and some cool moments around the survivors a perimeter create. I'll never get sick of watching him do flips when he fights Dooku. But by far the best moments in Attack of the Clones is when Obi-Wan is going Detective Obi-Wan, you know, tracking Jango on Kamino and getting into some trouble over there. And of course, Revenge of the Sith is the best movie in the prequel trilogy. We get to see Anakin full-on turn into Darth Vader. Order 66 is executed. We get the epic showdown between Obi-Wan and Anakin on Mustafar. It is a perfect conclusion to this trilogy in a top-tier Star Wars movie. Number 7 on my list is the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. To this day, the first Spider-Man movie from 2002 with Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin might actually be my overall favorite Spider-Man movie. It's a perfect origin story. I love how it embraces some of the campier sides of Spider-Man, but we also get some brutal moments where Spidey's fighting Green Goblin. Spidey's mask is ripped up. He's getting beaten down. I think that is the most brutal beating we see in any Spider-Man movie to date, and I just love how Willem Dafoe is so committed to this role, the way he's looking in the mirror. The itsy bitsy spider. The supporting cast in this movie is also what makes it. You've got James Franco as Harry Osborn, but you have to talk about J. Jonah Jameson. I want pictures of Spider-Man! It literally feels like a comic book thrown up on the big screen, and it is a perfect intro to this trilogy, but many would actually claim that Spider-Man 2 is the best movie in this trilogy, though I do prefer the first. Spider-Man 2 introduces Alfred Molina as Doc Ock, one of the best comic book movie villains to date. He's got such a tragic story. We get to see Peter Parker's journey here, struggling with his life as Spider-Man and trying to balance so many things to do what is right. It's really great storytelling, and then of course the weak link here is Spider-Man 3, though I still have a soft spot for it. Was Venom necessary to this movie? I don't think so. Sandman could have been the main villain. He's one of the best Spider-Man villains out there, and I love the story they told with him, but it got a little too clunky. You can definitely tell there was some studio interference here, but it still caps off the trilogy in a fun enough way, and I do wish we got a Spider-Man 4. We got what we got, and I'm happy with it. Number 6 on my list is the Back to the Future trilogy. 1.21 gigawatts, great Scott! The first Back to the Future is one of my top 10, top 15 favorite movies of all time, and every time I rewatch it, I gotta watch the rest of the trilogy. Part 2 is interesting. You basically replay the first movie through a different lens at times, but you also get like the multiverse essentially as you see other timelines and what could have happened. It just gets a lot more complex and adds to the lore of the Back to the Future universe. Biff plays a way more crucial role here. But then the third movie is like a straight up Western, and it's definitely like the dark horse of the the trilogy. A lot of people say it's the worst, and I probably think it's the worst as well, but it still does a great job of bringing the whole trilogy full circle. And I love how each movie has its own identity, and the lines Doc says at the very end when he talks about how your future is what you make it, essentially, it just hits different. Getting into my top 5, we've got the Toy Story trilogy. Now obviously Toy Story 4 exists, but I'm just talking about the trilogy because it feels like a definitive ending, and then Toy Story 4 is almost like an epilogue. The first Toy Story to this day is a timeless classic from Pixar, and you got Toy Story 2 introducing Al's Toy Barn. We get to explore the outside world more, but Toy Story 3 is the movie that's the heavy hitter here. It is my favorite Toy Story movie, almost my favorite Pixar movie or animated movie of all time alongside Ratatouille. Lotso Hug and Bear is the best Pixar villain, but this is a movie that's essentially about change and accepting moving on into the next phase of life. Something that I find highly difficult is change. I struggle with it, but this movie tackles it in a very easy to consume way. At the very end, we see Andy playing with the toys one final time. We get the so long partner moment. The tears swell, honestly, because it's like, we all have to move on in life and face change, and it's scary. We can do it. It's necessary. Toy Story 3 hits different. The first two Toy Story movies are a blast. The third one is an emotional roller coaster. Altogether, it makes for a damn great trilogy. So somehow in the process of filming this video, making my list, and actually editing it, I didn't realize that I completely left off the Dark Knight trilogy, which was actually in my original top 5. So because of that, I have to mention it here. It should have been on this list. That's just my fault. Starting with Batman Begins, you've got one of the best origin stories for any comic book movie ever. Liam Neeson plays Ra's al Ghul so well, and I love seeing Batman training, learning how to become the Dark Knight himself. There's some trippy moments here with Scarecrow, and I love how Nolan really inserts his style of storytelling with flashbacks. There's even hints of like Memento here as he's telling events out of order. That's a common trait of Nolan movies, and I really dug the way they told Batman's origin. Many would say The Dark Knight is the greatest comic book movie of all time, and again, it's in contention for sure. A lot of this is anchored by Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker. Absolutely incredible. Posthumously won the Oscar. Very well deserved. Rest in peace to a legend, because that performance is still haunting to this day, and it honestly anchors this movie. Hans Zimmer's score is masterful, like a top tier score of all time. It flies by from start to finish. It's just a staple of the comic book movie genre, and then you've got The Dark Knight Rises, which is by far the most overhated comic book movie in recent memory. It's a very fitting conclusion to this trilogy, with Tom Hardy's Bane being just a menace. Gotham's ashes. Then you have my permission to die. People did that impression for years after this movie came out. It was a smash hit at the box office, and again, a really fitting conclusion. Now, I think the main issues come with the conclusion of this movie and having to suspend disbelief, because it can get a little unrealistic, if you will. But I myself get chills when the final shot of this movie happens. The standout scene in this movie, without question, is when Bruce Wayne climbs out of the well, or the pit. If I ever need motivation in daily life, I'll just throw that scene on and I want to run through a brick wall. The Dark Knight trilogy is one of the greatest of all time, and it's so great almost that it deserves its own little segment in this video. But coming in at number 4 for me is the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy, because simply put, I don't acknowledge the 4th or 5th movies. The whole story feels complete at the end of the 3rd movie at World's End. Starting with The Curse of the Black Pearl, it's one of the greatest adventure films of all time. Like I always say, it's a swashbuckling fun time, and Captain Jack Sparrow is beyond iconic. I mean, Johnny Depp got nominated for an Oscar for creating this character. I love the classic ride at Walt Disney World as well, so that just adds to my appreciation for this movie. But the second movie, Dead Man's Chest, might be my most rewatched Pirates of the Caribbean film, and damn near is my number 1. Davy Jones is introduced here, and the CGI work that was done on that character is still remarkable to this day. He is the definitive best villain of this entire franchise. We get Jack sacrificing himself at the end with the classic "Hello, beastie" moment. We get the whole showdown between Norrington, Will Turner, and Jack Sparrow. Their whole fight on the wheel is iconic. And we get a lot of Kraken action here. This is an action-packed movie from start to finish. It's damn good storytelling. I felt tense, and of course Barbossa returns at the very end. What a cliffhanger ending that was, that led into the 3rd film at World's End, the longest of the trilogy by far, and my least favorite of the trilogy, but still a very fitting and epic conclusion. The whole like damn near last hour of this movie is the Maelstrom battle. There's some bizarre moments in here, like the Calypso release. That's a little strange and out there. I don't think the movie needed to be 2 hours and 49 minutes, but I still dig the hell out of it, and it caps off this trilogy wonderfully. Coming in at number 3 for me, I'm kind of cheating again, is the Indiana Jones trilogy, which consists of Raiders, Temple of Doom, and The Last Crusade. The Last Crusade was the last Indiana Jones movie for decades, and then we got Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and we're about to get the 5th movie, but I'm just gonna go ahead and say that the first 3 movies count as a trilogy. And because of that, this is the greatest adventure trilogy of all time, with Raiders of the Lost Ark being a top 5 movie for me ever. It's Steven Spielberg's best work in my opinion. It's infinitely rewatchable, and it's so fast-paced. This quest to stop the Nazis from discovering the Ark of the Covenant is on. Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones is an icon, not only of like my childhood, but just in general. Like, it's the most recognizable movie silhouette ever. And we roll into Temple of Doom, the second movie. It's a lot darker. It's actually a prequel technically to the first movie because it is set a year prior. And this movie's a lot darker. It's one I didn't watch as much growing up because it's just so dark and disturbing, frankly. But it allows for some tonal differences when you're watching the trilogy back to back to back. But The Last Crusade, I think, is the most family-friendly, fun movie of them all. The father-son dynamic between Sean Connery as Henry Jones and Indy is perfect chemistry. I think this is definitely the most pure fun Indiana Jones movie, and like I said, might be the most rewatchable. It's close to being my favorite of the Indy movies. But my runner-up for my favorite movie trilogy of all time is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I rewatched it last summer. I just rewatched it this past weekend. It is a perfect trilogy. All the movies are 3 hours, but they don't feel like 3-hour movies. The first movie is a perfect origin. We get to see, you know, the calmness of the Shire and Frodo and all of the characters before we see the journey that takes a toll on all of them physically and mentally. Seeing the formation of the Fellowship of the Ring gives me chills every time. It's a very special moment. Seeing them all on this journey as they go through the mines of Moria and Gandalf sacrifices himself when they fight the Balrog, that's iconic. The final showdown with the orcs at the end when everyone goes their separate ways is great. And the movie asserts the fact that this ring will corrupt your mind and it needs to be destroyed. The stakes are set right out the gate. It does a great job of world building, setting the stage for the rest of the trilogy and really getting me hooked as we head into Two Towers, which is personally my least favorite, though I do think it contains the best cinematic battle in existence. The Battle of Helm's Deep is damn impressive. Honestly, you feel the scale, but I also was like terrified watching it for the first time just because they're so outnumbered fighting this massive army of orcs. I say it every time I talk about the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but we really just don't get epic battles of this caliber that aren't full-on CGI anymore. Like, this feels practical and real, and it fully immersed me into the battle. Aside from the epic third act with Helm's Deep, I'm not crazy about the Ents plotline with Treebeard, and a lot of this movie does meander for me, but it's a really solid middleman that bridges the gap as we head into Return of the King, which I think is probably still the strongest of the trilogy. We get our epic battles for sure, but everyone has a fitting end, and everyone gets their time to shine in the end. Aragorn is king, my friends, you bow to no one. That line gives me chills and brings tears to my eyes, and everyone has a very satisfying ending. It's a perfect conclusion to a perfect trilogy. Many would say this is the best trilogy of all time, and I can't argue with that, but my number one trilogy of all time, and will always be this way, is the original Star Wars trilogy consisting of New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. I rewatched this trilogy on a loop growing up, and for the longest time I've said my favorite movie of all time is the original Star Wars. That's just the perfect hero's journey put to screen. The final run on the Death Star is just enthralling. Like when Han comes in and he says, "Yo!" It's just got that adventure feel. Empire Strikes Back, many would say, is one of the greatest movies of all time, and I mean, I'm not going to argue with you there. It's the darkest of the Star Wars movies. The iconic "No, I am your father" moment is revealed, and then you got Return of the Jedi. I think this movie's criminally underrated. I think it is the third best Star Wars movie. Emperor Palpatine and the throne room scenes with him trying to manipulate Luke to turn to the dark side. Perfect Star Wars right there. Seeing the rage in Luke's eyes as he's striking Vader and then he realizes, this is my father, what am I doing? It's perfect. We get another run on the Death Star in this movie. Simultaneously, the whole Battle of Endor is going on down below, and it's just a very fun Star Wars movie. It ends on a very high note with everyone celebrating on Endor. The victory medley score that was added into the special edition is one of my favorite scores in all of Star Wars. And the final shot of everyone just smiling and happy together puts a big old smile on my face. It makes me feel like I'm getting a big hug. If I want to rewatch a trilogy, my go-to is going to be the Star Wars original trilogy, and I think I'm due for a rewatch here very soon. But those are just my top 10 favorite movie trilogies of all time. Let me know yours in the comments down below, and be sure to hit the like button. But thank you guys again for watching. Stay tuned for more videos coming very soon, and until next time, we'll see you guys later.